In the quiet town of Ashford, nestled deep in the English countryside where time seemed to have taken a long, lazy pause, life moved with a gentle, predictable rhythm. The streets were lined with quaint cottages, their gardens bursting with roses and lavender, and neighbors exchanged knowing glances and polite nods, their curiosity simmering just beneath the surface like a slow-burning kettle. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business, sometimes to a maddening degree, and where the scent of freshly baked goods wafted through open windows like a comforting promise. Amelia had lived in Ashford for nearly a decade, a small town where the past clung to the present like the ivy on the old brick walls. Her husband, Thomas, was a mechanical engineer at the local mill, a reserved man whose careful demeanor often felt worn thin by years of quiet routine. He was precise, methodical, and as dependable as the town clock, but beneath his steady exterior, Amelia sensed a slow fading, like a photograph left too long in the sun. Together, they had built a life that looked perfect on the outside, neat, orderly, and calm. But within Amelia, there was a hollow she had long avoided acknowledging. On that particular evening, the day had folded into a delicate silence. The street lamp outside cast a soft, yellow glow through the lace curtains, and the cozy kitchen was filled with the warm aroma of cinnamon and apples, a homemade pie sitting proudly on the windowsill. Amelia stood barefoot on the cool tiled floor, her cotton robe loosely tied around her slender frame. The fabric was soft, worn from years of washing, and the robe's hem brushed just above her knees, revealing the smooth curve of her calves. Her hair was pinned up carelessly with a few loose strands framing her face, and a simple silver locket rested at her throat, catching the dim light. Suddenly, the faint click of a key in the front door shattered the stillness. The door creaked open, and there he was, Daniel, Thomas's son from a previous marriage. At 21, Daniel was a university student in London and came home only rarely, his visits usually brief and marked by quick hellos and polite smiles. But this time, there was something different in the air, something heavier, as if the very atmosphere in the house had shifted with him. Daniel entered silently, dragging a battered suitcase behind him. There were no hugs, no warmth, just the soft scrape of wheels against the wooden floor, and his quiet voice greeting Thomas, "Evening, Dad." Thomas nodded without rising from his armchair, and Amelia's fingers trembled slightly as she continued chopping fresh herbs, feeling Daniel's gaze settle on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. It was as if he were examining her for the first time, not as a stepmother, but as something else entirely. The next morning, Amelia woke before dawn, the house still wrapped in shadows. She slipped into a simple, navy blue knit dress that hugged her figure just enough to hint at curves without drawing too much attention. Beneath it, she wore delicate pale pink lingerie trimmed with lace, a secret indulgence just for herself, a reminder that she could still feel desired, even if the world around her suggested otherwise. Her feet were bare, and the cool wooden floor beneath them grounded her in the moment, making her pulse quicken with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Daniel appeared in the kitchen unexpectedly, dressed casually in a soft white t-shirt and faded jeans, his dark hair tousled as if he had just rolled out of bed. He leaned against the counter, watching her carefully as she set out cups for tea. Amelia felt the hem of her dress lift slightly as she bent, and she could almost sense his gaze tracing the line of her knees. She fought to keep her composure, focusing on the mundane task of making breakfast, but the tension between them was palpable. Their conversation was sparse and practical. Talk of petrol prices, the unpredictable British weather. But beneath the surface flowed an undercurrent of something unspoken, a secret current that pulled at the edges of their words. Later, locked away in the bathroom, Amelia took extra time choosing her lingerie, her hands trembling as she smoothed a lace bra over her skin. Catching her reflection in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. Eyes bright, cheeks flushed, a flicker of desire awakening after too long a sleep. That evening, as she washed the dishes, Daniel stood silently in the doorway, arms crossed. The quiet drip of water from the tap filled the room, but Amelia was keenly aware of his presence, the heat of his breath just a little too close for comfort. When he brushed past her, their bodies nearly touched, and the soft rustle of her dress against his hand sent a shiver up her spine. She turned sharply, but he was already gone, swallowed by the shadows of the hallway. Thomas left early the next day for work, as usual, leaving Amelia and Daniel alone in the house. She moved through the rooms, cleaning, watering plants, performing the rituals of domestic life while a storm of thoughts raged silently inside her. Daniel watched everything with quiet attention, the scent of her perfume, the way she walked, even the subtle color of her nail polish, recording it all as if committing her to memory. By evening, Amelia had slipped into a sheer white blouse that revealed the dark lace of her lingerie beneath, a quiet act of defiance and self-affirmation. Daniel stood nearby, silent but present, their proximity charged with unspoken questions and dangerous possibilities. When she touched her hair, pretending to adjust it, time seemed to stretch taut between them. The old clock ticked loudly on the wall, marking moments that felt like a countdown. Suddenly, the front door creaked open. Thomas was back. Amelia's hands trembled as she returned to chopping cucumbers. The fragile balance shattered but irrevocably changed. The night passed with the usual routines, but inside Amelia, everything had begun to unravel. The following morning dawned too bright, as if the sun itself was intent on exposing every hidden truth. Amelia dressed in a light, flowing skirt and a blouse that clung gently to her waist, the lavender lace of her underwear a secret only she knew. Her hair was gathered in a loose bun, strands falling softly around her face. A picture of calm on the surface, though beneath it, a restless storm brewed. Daniel arrived again, casual and unhurried. His damp hair still carried the scent of trees and mint, and his silence filled the kitchen with tension. Thomas had left early, citing work, leaving the two of them alone once more. Amelia busied herself with small tasks, trying to ignore the magnetic pull between them. But when their hands brushed over the dinner table, the shock of contact sent a jolt through her, and Daniel's steady gaze held hers without apology. Later, Amelia retreated to the bedroom, heart pounding as she sat on the edge of the bed. She wore an old sweater and shorts, comfort clothes, but when Daniel appeared in the doorway, his eyes traced the length of her legs with a quiet intensity. She straightened, tugging her sweater's hem down, trying to mask the flutter of vulnerability she felt. Rain began to fall softly outside as they settled on the sofa to watch a film. Something light, as Daniel suggested. Between the flickering images and the soundtrack, Amelia found herself acutely aware of his presence. The way he breathed, the subtle shifting of his weight, the warmth radiating from his body so close to hers. When the credits rolled, he turned to her with a half-smile and asked, "Do you often stay so quiet?" Amelia's reply came without thought, "And do you often watch like that?" The silence that followed was deep and thick, stretching between them like a taut wire. The next day, Daniel left for a few days to visit friends in Nottingham. Amelia should have felt relief, but instead, an ache lingered, like he had taken something vital with him, something she hadn't yet realized was missing. When he returned that evening, the air seemed charged anew. She was on the balcony, watering flowers in a soft cotton dress scented faintly of cherry blossoms, no bra beneath. A small act of rebellion in the privacy of home. Daniel climbed the steps carrying a grocery bag, his expression calm but with a trace of teasing warmth, no longer the distant figure he had been. As he entered, he remarked quietly, "The flat smells like you." "That must be the lilacs," Amelia replied, glancing away. "No, definitely not lilacs," he said, and the room seemed to close in around her. He leaned on the kitchen counter, silent and still. The kettle hissed as she filled it, fingers trembling. That night, Thomas stayed late with colleagues, promising to return after the pubs closed. Amelia and Daniel ate dinner alone, the table set with a pristine white cloth, a single candle flickering between two empty chairs, an unspoken invitation, a silent question. Daniel spoke hesitantly about his trip, words clipped and chosen with care. Amelia found herself watching his lips, wondering about the thoughts behind each syllable. He noticed and held her gaze, unblinking. After clearing the table, she moved to the living room, cup in hand. Daniel stood suddenly, closing the distance between them until they were almost touching. His eyes burned with an intensity that felt like a touch, warm and urgent. "That I shouldn't be here," he whispered. "But you're here. Why don't you leave?" she asked softly. Because I don't want to, he admitted. Their breath mingled, the room shrinking around them, charged with a tension neither dared to break. His hand traced the seam of her dress, then slid to her waist. Amelia closed her eyes, waiting for the moment to shatter or solidify. But the moment lingered, fragile and infinite, until the sharp slam of the front door shattered the spell. Thomas had returned. The evening unfolded with the usual pleasantries. News on the television, cups of tea with jam. But inside Amelia, a tempest raged. She couldn't sit still, pacing, checking the stove, rearranging glasses. The silence between moments stretched taut as a drawn bowstring at midnight. She stood before the bathroom mirror, her face flushed, eyes glassy though no tears fell. She shed her dress, revealing skin that felt exposed, vulnerable yet alive. She pulled on a short cotton pajama set trimmed with lace, modest yet intimate, and wrapped a soft robe around her. Passing through the hallway, she found Daniel by the stairs, headphones on, shirtless, dressed in loose joggers. Without a word, they shared a look heavy with unspoken meaning. She moved past him, heart pounding wildly. Sleep eluded her as she lay in bed clutching a pillow, feeling the ghost of his gaze on her skin, the warmth of his absent touch. Morning came with a sense of foreboding, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Amelia dressed carefully. A pale gray shirt buttoned neatly, a skirt that hugged her hips and fell just below the knee, nude lingerie nearly invisible beneath. Her hair was loose, makeup light but intentional, a mask of normalcy. Thomas left early for a business trip to Brighton, 2 days away. Amelia nodded at dinner, the simplicity of it all making her uneasy. Left alone with Daniel, they moved through the day trying to pretend nothing had changed, but the air between them buzzed like a live wire. When Daniel suggested a walk, she agreed, and they wandered silently down the quiet streets of Ashford, past peeling fences and overgrown gardens fragrant with lilac. The silence between them was comfortable, charged with electricity. They veered into an abandoned park, where rusted swings creaked and benches wore peeling paint. Amelia perched on one, crossing her legs and smoothing her skirt. Daniel's gaze drifted down to her knees. Everything feels lost here, he murmured. Like many things, she replied. "Do you feel lost?" His voice was heavy, more statement than question. She couldn't find an answer. The weight of his words hung between them. Back at the house, Amelia slipped off her shoes in the hallway. Daniel's hand rested lightly on her shoulder, tracing the line of her shirt before he withdrew and disappeared into the living room. That evening, she soaked in a bath scented with vanilla, her skin soft and warm beneath a sheer nightgown and silk robe. Daniel read quietly nearby, but she sensed his attention was elsewhere. Near midnight, she slipped to the kitchen, avoiding the light. Daniel followed, and they stood facing each other, the distance between them electric. "That I shouldn't be here," he whispered. "But you are," she replied, heart hammering. He stepped closer, and she backed against the fridge. His hand brushed her collarbone. She closed her eyes but didn't pull away. Their bodies hovered on the edge of something forbidden. Then the phone rang. He withdrew. She climbed the stairs, clutching her mug, and lay awake as Thomas's voice filled the room. Kind, familiar, but distant, like a fading echo. Something inside her broke. She heard Daniel's footsteps in the hall but didn't open the door. She lay trembling, caught between worlds. The next morning, the house was silent, heavy with unsaid words. Amelia found a dried lilac sprig on the windowsill, a small, innocent thing that felt like a secret betrayal. She dressed in a soft gray dress, its fabric clinging gently to her curves, black lace lingerie hinting at daring beneath. Her hair was loosely pinned, stray tendrils framing her face. Daniel was in the kitchen, absorbed in his phone. Their eyes met and held too long, the air thick with tension. Over tea. His gaze roamed from her wrists to her neck, lips. "You've changed," he said softly. "Maybe I'm finally becoming myself," she whispered. Later, while sorting through an old storage closet, Daniel appeared, leaning against the doorframe. "You hide when you want to be found," he said quietly. She only smiled, understanding. He entered slowly, closing the door behind him. I don't know how to handle this, he admitted. But if I leave now, I'll regret it forever. And if you stay? She breathed. Their foreheads touched, lips nearly meeting. Not a kiss, but a confession. His hands roamed her waist and back, her body responding with a fierce, restrained hunger. The fabric of her dress caught on his shirt as he memorized every curve, her fingers clutching his shoulders like a lifeline. They hovered on the brink when the phone rang again. Thomas. Heart pounding, Amelia broke away, answering with a trembling voice. When she returned, Daniel was gone, leaving only the scent of wood and warmth behind. Upstairs, her old diary lay open on the bed. He had found it, read it. She didn't know what he thought, but the words echoed in her mind. I see you. I know you. Thomas came home bearing lilacs, and for a moment, they embraced, smiles masking the storm beneath. Daniel withdrew, silent at dinner, until the next day, on the veranda, under a gray sky and restless breeze. He stood behind her and said softly, I'm leaving for good. She didn't turn around. Because I love you. And you couldn't bear it, she whispered. His hand rested on her shoulder one last time before he walked away and tears fell. Only later, alone in the bathroom, she sat on the cold floor, tracing the ghost of his touch. It was not betrayal. It was awakening. He vanished without a word. But a week later, a letter arrived, short, without date or sender. I don't regret it. Hope you don't either. She tucked it away in a box with ribbons and old lingerie. Secrets folded away, waiting, and somewhere beyond the quiet streets of Ashford, the story was far from over. The morning light filtered softly through the lace curtains, casting delicate patterns across the polished oak floor of the sitting room. Amelia sat by the window, a cup of black tea warming her hands, though the chill in the air was nothing compared to the cold knot twisting in her stomach. The letter from Daniel lay folded beside her, the edges worn from her fingers tracing the words again and again, like a whispered incantation meant to summon clarity from the haze of confusion outside. The small town of Ashford stirred to life, the familiar sounds of birdsong mingling with the distant rumble of a delivery van navigating narrow streets lined with weathered brick cottages and flowering hedgerows. The scent of damp earth after an early morning drizzle drifted in, mingling with the faint aroma of freshly baked bread from Mrs. Whitaker's bakery down the road. Life moved forward here, as it always did. Indifferent to the quiet turmoil unfolding behind closed doors, Amelia's thoughts were interrupted by the soft chime of the front doorbell. Her heart leapt, hope and dread commingling in a tight knot. She set the letter aside and smoothed her pale gray dress, the fabric clinging gently to her curves, before rising to answer. The hallway was awash with the muted glow of a foggy morning, the wooden floorboards creaking softly beneath her bare feet. Opening the door, she found no one there but a small parcel resting on the doormat, wrapped in plain brown paper and tied with a thin cream ribbon. She bent to pick it up, her fingers trembling slightly as she untied the bow and peeled back the paper. Inside was a leather-bound journal, its cover worn and soft, the pages yellowed with age. No note accompanied it. Curiosity piqued, Amelia closed the door and carried the journal to the kitchen, where the kettle was already boiling. She poured the steaming water over a teabag in her favorite china cup, a delicate floral pattern that Thomas had given her on their 5th anniversary, and settled at the table. The journal's spine creaked as she opened it, revealing elegant, looping handwriting that immediately drew her in. The entries were dated years before she had even met Daniel, chronicling moments of solitude, longing, and self-discovery from a voice that felt hauntingly familiar. The writer spoke of dreams deferred, of a restless spirit trapped in the confines of small-town expectations. Lines blurred between hope and despair, desire and restraint. It was Daniel's voice, but also something more. A window into the parts of him he had never shared. Amelia's fingers traced the words, each sentence a tender confession. She read late into the morning, losing herself in the pages as the world outside moved on. The journal revealed layers of Daniel she hadn't seen. A young man wrestling with his identity, haunted by the shadow of his absent mother, yearning for connection yet terrified of vulnerability. A sudden knock on the door startled her. She closed the journal quickly, heart pounding. Just a moment, she called, smoothing her expression. Thomas stood on the threshold, his face drawn and pale, eyes shadowed with fatigue. "Morning," he said quietly, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "I thought I'd surprise you." Amelia forced a smile, setting the journal aside. "Surprise indeed." She gestured toward the kitchen table. He nodded, rubbing the back of his neck. "Long drive yesterday. Work's been complicated." His gaze flickered to the journal. "What's that?" "Just something Daniel left behind." Amelia replied vaguely, unsure how much to reveal. Thomas's jaw tightened. That boy always had his secrets. He paused, then sighed. "You know, Amelia, I'm not proud of how things have been lately. I feel like I'm losing grip on us." She looked at him, her heart aching. "We both feel it." But pretending it's not there won't fix anything, he reached across the table, taking her hand gently. "I want to try. Really try." Before Amelia could respond, the sound of the front door opening and closing echoed through the house. Daniel was back. The air shifted, charged with a tension that made Amelia's skin prickle. Daniel entered the room, the weight of unspoken words hanging between them like a thick fog. He was dressed casually, but the usual teasing lightness in his eyes was absent, replaced by something raw and uncertain. "Hello," he said quietly, his gaze flicking between Amelia and Thomas. Thomas stood slowly, clearing his throat. "Good to see you, Daniel." The three of them sat in uneasy silence, the past and present weaving a complex tapestry of love, betrayal, and yearning. Amelia felt caught between two worlds, each man a reflection of different facets of her heart. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the wooden floor, Daniel spoke for the first time. "I didn't come back to cause pain. I came back because I needed to find out who I am and where I belong." His words hung in the air, fragile yet powerful. Amelia met his gaze, feeling the weight of his journey resonate deep within her. "Maybe we all need to find that out," she whispered. Thomas nodded slowly, the hardness in his eyes softening. "Then let's start by talking. No more secrets." But just as the fragile truce began to settle, the phone rang, its shrill cry slicing through the quiet. Amelia answered, her voice barely a whisper. "Hello?" A cold, unfamiliar voice on the other end chilled her to the bone. "You don't know me, but I know everything. Be careful who you trust. The past isn't done with any of you." The line went dead. The three looked at one another, a storm gathering on the horizon. The mystery had only just begun. The house seemed to hold its breath after the call, the air thick with an invisible tension that wrapped itself around Amelia like a cold, unwelcome cloak. The kitchen clock ticked loudly, each second hammering into the silence that had fallen. Thomas's face paled as he set down his tea cup with a trembling hand. Daniel's jaw clenched tightly, eyes narrowing, but his usual guarded demeanor cracked, revealing a flicker of vulnerability. Amelia stood by the window, staring out at the gray skies rolling over Ashford's sleepy rooftops, her mind racing. Who could that voice belong to? What secrets lurked in the shadows of their past, ready to unravel the fragile threads holding their lives together? The small town, with its neatly trimmed hedges and polite neighbors, suddenly felt like a stage set for a dark play she didn't want to be part of. Thomas broke the silence first, his voice low and steady despite the storm brewing inside. "We need to figure out who's behind this. Whoever they are, they're playing with fire. And they've been watching us for a long time." Daniel ran a hand through his messy hair, frustration evident. "I thought leaving London would mean leaving all that behind. But maybe the past follows us, no matter where we go." Amelia's heart ached as she looked at them both. The father and son caught in a web of unspoken grievances and hidden pain, their shared history tangled with hers in ways she was only beginning to understand. Later that evening, the rain began to fall in earnest, drumming against the windows like a relentless percussion. Amelia sat alone in the dim glow of the living room, the journal resting on her lap. She opened it once more, hoping for answers, but the pages offered only more questions. Daniel's words, filled with longing and regret, echoed in her mind. A sudden knock at the door startled her, making her heart leap. She rose cautiously, wrapping a soft cashmere shawl around her shoulders before peering through the peephole. No one was there, Only a small envelope slipped under the door, its cream-colored paper contrasting sharply with the dark wood. She picked it up and unfolded the note inside. The handwriting was neat, elegant, but unfamiliar. Sometimes, the truth is more dangerous than the lies. Trust no one. The past is never buried. A shiver ran down Amelia's spine. The game had changed, and the stakes were higher than she ever imagined. The following days blurred into a tense dance of whispered conversations and furtive glances. Daniel grew more withdrawn, retreating into himself as if haunted by invisible demons. Thomas, normally so composed, paced the house late into the night, his mind racing for solutions. Amelia found herself caught between them, a silent witness to a family unraveling. She began to question everything: their past, their present, and the uncertain future that stretched before them like a darkened path. One afternoon, as she sorted through old boxes in the attic, she discovered a faded photograph tucked inside a yellowed envelope. It showed a young woman with striking green eyes and a mischievous smile. Daniel's mother, a figure shrouded in mystery and whispered rumors in Ashford. Amelia traced the edges of the photo, feeling a mix of curiosity and foreboding. Suddenly, footsteps echoed on the stairs. She turned to see Daniel standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Without a word, he crossed the room and took the photograph from her hands, holding it gently as if it were both a treasure and a burden. "We never really knew her," he murmured. "But she's the key to everything." That night, the house was filled with a restless energy. Thomas and Daniel sat together, poring over old letters and documents that surfaced like ghosts from the past. Amelia watched from the shadows, her pulse quickening with every revelation. But just as pieces of the puzzle began to fit, a sudden power outage plunged the house into darkness. The only light came from the flickering candle on the kitchen table, casting dancing shadows on the walls and the silence. A soft creak came from the hallway. Amelia's breath caught as a figure slipped through the darkness, moving with a predatory grace. Her heart pounded as recognition dawned. It was not Daniel or Thomas, but someone else. Someone who had been watching them all along. The candle flickered violently before going out, plunging the room into complete blackness. A whispered voice, cold and menacing, filled the void. "This is only the beginning," and then silence. The mystery deepened, and the quiet town of Ashford was no longer a refuge, but a battleground where secrets waited to be unearthed, and no one was safe. The darkness lingered like a thick fog, swallowing the room whole. Amelia's breath hitched, her senses sharpening in the blackness. The faintest sound, a whisper, a shuffle, echoed from the hallway, sending a shiver down her spine. Her fingers fumbled for the matches on the kitchen counter, knocking over a glass with a sharp clatter that shattered the silence. In the moments before light could flicker to life, the figure was gone, vanished as if swallowed by the shadows themselves. A soft creak from the stairs jolted Amelia upright. "Thomas? Daniel?" she called out, voice trembling but firm. Only silence answered, thick and heavy. Suddenly, the power surged back, and the overhead lights blinked on, harsh and revealing. The house seemed too bright, too exposed. Her eyes darted around the room. Everything appeared untouched, yet the air thrummed with unsaid threats. Thomas emerged from the study, face pale but eyes sharp. "Amelia," he said in a low voice, "someone's been inside. I think they wanted to scare us." Daniel appeared behind him, rubbing his hands nervously. "It's not just about us anymore," he muttered. "Whoever this is, they know too much." Amelia wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly feeling very small in the vast, echoing house. "But why? What do they want from us?" Thomas stepped closer, lowering his voice. "That's what we need to find out. And fast. If they're willing to break in, nothing is off limits." The next morning dawned bleak and gray, the sky swollen with rain. Amelia dressed in a soft cream blouse and tailored trousers, the simplicity of her outfit belying the turmoil beneath. She met Daniel in the kitchen, where he poured coffee with a distracted air. "We can't keep hiding," he said abruptly. "There's something in my mother's past. Something I've been too afraid to face." Amelia nodded, heart pounding. "Then we face it together." They spent the day combing through old letters and photographs, tracing the tangled threads of a story that stretched back decades. Daniel's mother, Eleanor, had been more than the quiet, mysterious woman everyone in Ashford whispered about. Her life was marked by secrets, loves lost, betrayals endured, and a shadowy figure who seemed to loom over the family's history as evening fell. Amelia found herself alone in the garden, the damp earth cool beneath her feet. She pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders, her thoughts a whirlwind. The peaceful facade of Ashford was cracking, revealing something darker and more dangerous beneath. A sudden rustling in the hedges startled her. She turned swiftly, heart racing, only to find a small, soaked envelope resting on the stone bench. Trembling, she opened it to find a single photograph. A grainy image of Eleanor standing beside a man whose face was obscured by shadow. On the back, a message was scrawled in hurried handwriting. Trust no one. The past will find you. Amelia's breath caught, the weight of the warning settling over her like a storm cloud. Somewhere, in the quiet streets and cozy homes of Ashford, a secret waited, one that could destroy them all. And as the night deepened, the house creaked once more, shadows shifting just beyond the edge of sight, promising that the past was far from finished with them. The rain hammered relentlessly against the window panes, a steady drumming that seemed to echo the tumult inside Amelia's chest. The dim glow of the bedside lamp cast soft shadows across the room. Where she sat curled on the edge of the bed, the faded photograph clutched tightly in her hand. Eleanor's face stared back at her, serene yet enigmatic, a ghost trapped in time. The shadowy figure beside her was obscured, but the menace in the blurred silhouette was unmistakable. A knock at the door startled Amelia. She quickly folded the photo and slipped it into the pocket of her blouse before calling. Come in. The door creaked open, and Daniel stepped inside, his eyes heavy with exhaustion and something darker, determination. Did you find anything else? Amelia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel shook his head, running a hand through his damp hair. Nothing concrete yet. But there's something I need to tell you. About Eleanor. About why she left London so suddenly. Amelia gestured for him to sit, her heart pounding. Daniel lowered himself onto the chair, fingers intertwined tightly. She was involved in something dangerous. Something that wasn't just about family secrets or small-town gossip. There was a man, someone powerful, with connections that stretched far beyond Ashford. Amelia swallowed hard, the pieces of a dark puzzle beginning to click into place. Do you think he's the one behind the threats? The break-in? Daniel nodded slowly. I'm sure of it. And I'm scared, Amelia. Not just for me, but for you. And Thomas. A sudden chill ran through the room as if the walls themselves had absorbed the weight of his words. Amelia looked away, biting her lip to hold back the fear threatening to spill over. I don't want to be caught in this, she confessed, voice trembling. But I don't know how to get out. Daniel reached across the space between them, his hand warm against hers. We face it, together. The next day dawned with a brittle coldness, the sky a steely blue that promised no warmth. Amelia dressed carefully, a fitted charcoal coat over a soft cashmere sweater and tailored trousers. Sturdy boots laced tightly for the muddy paths she knew she'd have to walk. She felt the weight of the leather-bound journal in her bag, its pages a map through the past's treacherous terrain. They met Thomas at the town library, a modest stone building with arched windows and the scent of aging paper. Inside, the trio huddled over microfilm readers and dusty archives, searching for traces of Eleanor's shadowed history. Hours passed in a haze of faded newspaper clippings and brittle letters, revealing a web of lies, blackmail, and hidden alliances. As dusk settled outside, Thomas leaned back, rubbing his tired eyes. There's one name that keeps coming up. Reginald Crane. Amelia frowned. Who is he? A local businessman turned politician. Charismatic, respected, or at least that's the public face. But behind closed doors, whispers of corruption and intimidation follow him like a cloak. Daniel's jaw tightened. He was the last person Eleanor was seen with before she vanished. The weight of the revelation pressed down on them all, the library's silence now feeling oppressive, as if the walls themselves were warning them to stop digging. Walking home through the cold evening streets, Amelia's thoughts spun. The quiet town she'd known felt transformed. A place where shadows moved with intent, and history was not past but present. Waiting to strike, back at the house, she paused at the doorway, the familiar creak greeting her like an old friend turned stranger. Inside, the faint scent of vanilla lingered. Thomas's attempt at comfort, or perhaps a reminder of normalcy slipping away as she prepared tea. The phone rang sharply, slicing through the quiet. Her fingers trembled as she answered. A voice, distorted and unrecognizable, whispered just one chilling sentence. "Stop searching or everything you love will be lost." The line went dead. Amelia stood frozen, the cup slipping from her hand, shattering against the floor. The shards glittered like broken promises. Outside, the wind howled, carrying with it the sinister promise that the past was not done with Ashford, or with her.